Hey guys, guess where I am? My house. Now, this is not the real rebuild you've seen me work on. That's my new house under construction. This is a 1970s house that I remodeled and have lived in for 14 years. Now, in today's video, I'm going to go a little behind the scenes at my house. I'll give you a tour. I'm going to show you some dumb things I did 14 years ago, some smart things that have really held up over the years, and quite a few things that I've changed out because they didn't work for me. Today's video from my house, sponsored by Christy Reisinger, MD. That's my wife's YouTube channel. And by the way, she has no idea I'm filming this video today. Give her some love and go over to her channel and hit that subscribe button. Today's video from my house, let's get going. All right, so 1970s house. I did a full house remodel. A lot has happened. I've had several babies born into this house, and now two puppies, two dogs have lived here. So the house has taken a lot of abuse. But let me show you what I did. I really opened up this 70s house. It had a ton of walls. This was a rental house when I bought it, so it wasn't cared for very well. But there was a huge wall across here separating the entry from this family room space. And then there was a huge wall across here and back that was separating the formal living room from the formal dining room, and then another wall separating the kitchen from the living room. So by opening this up, man, it's been so wonderful. It's really allowed us to live as one big space. And then we have a great ability to host people, to have parties here, to have church groups, things like that over. It's been wonderful. The kitchen, I love the open concept, but let's start here. Dumb. Concrete countertops. You know, I totally fell into this fad. This is, I remodeled this in 05, 06. Concrete was kind of the cool thing, and I totally fell into it. I talked my wife into it. It's been terrible. We've hated it, frankly. Now, concrete, incredibly porous, and that's its downfall. You can put the most bomber, most expensive sealer on it. It's always going to break down. And if you look here, this is where we do our cutting board work. No matter how much I've sealed it over the years, it always needs resealed. Who wants a countertop that you need to reseal every 6 months or a year? I find that really dumb, especially for a family. Now, some people like the patina. I am not into it, and my wife hates it. Next house, my real rebuild, we're going to be using a quartz countertop. A Caesar stone, probably, maybe a silestone. They make some incredibly beautiful countertops that are thoroughly impervious, so that when you take that sponge and do a wipe down, that countertop looks brand new. And this one, no matter how much you wipe it down, not good. Smart cabinets. These cabinets have been great. I used real plywood cabinets, real plywood boxes. I used good hardware. And you know what? I haven't had to refinish these. Now, they're not perfect. They don't look like the day I moved in. But if I go to sell this house, it'd be really easy to touch these up, and they're ready to go for the next homeowner for the next 20 years. Dumb appliances. This is a hard one, right? Because most of America, we buy these kind of stainless steel mid-price appliances. I think I spent maybe $10,000 on this house for all of my appliances, maybe not even quite that much. And I got kind of a middle upper brand. Don't surmise. I'm going to try and block those out so you don't see what I've used here. But you know what? I've had 2 cooktops. I've had 2 refrigerators. The oven micro is the original, but that's it. And my washer and dryer have been probably fixed 4 or 5 times. And this is my second dishwasher. It's a hard thing on appliances, right? Because we don't have tons of money to spend. Like my in-laws, for instance, they were able to afford a Sub-Zero in the 80s on their kitchen remodel. But that Sub-Zero is the same one that's in their house 35 years later. They have replaced the compressor once on the refrigerator and once on the freezer. But over the course of 35 years, one replacement on a compressor, that's pretty good, and it still has value. There's something to be said there. We'll see if this dishwasher lasts. This is a Miele, which is a German brand. It was a lot more expensive than the lower priced model I had in here when I originally built it, which died on me. But so far, it's been really good. I've got a water softener in there. There's actually a place where you can pour salts. And they're smart about that, because now that water softener means that all the seals are not going to break down with the hard water. That's a hard one, though. I realize that a lot of the houses I build, my clients have the budget to put a lot more in appliances than $6,500 or whatever most Americans are spending on their appliances. I just wish that we weren't so focused on Energy Star labels and we were more focused on long-term durability. And could I buy an appliance that would still be working and would be repairable 20, 30 plus years later? Smart hardware. Now, I used a bunch of hardware in this house that I spent some money on, and it has really held up. This corner back here is usually a dead corner that most of the time we'll use a lazy Susan on. That's that rolling corner piece. But check this out. This is from HVAC. They call it a magic corner. Some German ingenuity right there. Look at that. You've got full access to everything back there, and it's still, almost 15 years later, glides perfectly. You can hide everything in the corner. Nice and smooth operation. Isn't that sweet? Magic corner, aptly named by HVAC. Dumb switches and lights. I've got a bunch of these fancy switch plates. I got kind of snowed by the rep for this company that was like, oh, I'll give you 30% off, and designed all these fancy ones with some fancy plates. I spent a bunch of money thinking, oh, it's 30% off, giving me this discount for my personal house. Thoroughly dumb. I should have just put regular white Decora rocker switches and maybe a screwless plate. I do like screwless plates, but I could have saved thousands of dollars. And most of these I've ended up replacing, because when I built this house, in my defense, I was trying to be really cautious about electrical use. I put a lot of compact fluorescent fixtures in, which, as you all know, are gone these days. And when you upgrade to LED, a bunch of these switches do not work with the newer LEDs. So this is one bank of switches I haven't replaced. That's because I've kept my original halogen lights in the kitchen. But in other places, I've switched out to some halo, where I had original halo cans in, and it was really easy to pull that trim and that bulb out and change it out with an LED, like on my front door, my outdoor lights, my hallway, and those have been fantastic. That's what I'll be doing on the new house. Smart hidden door. You know I love my hidden doors in my clients' houses. I had to do one at this house. Now, this isn't original to the house. This originally was actually my home office. My company was based in this room in 2006 when I moved in here. We turned it into a kid's bedroom when I had an extra baby born, and then now it's actually my kind of homeschool room for my kiddos. And I think in 2015 we did this. Check that out. This was just a recess in the wall, and my carpenters did a fantastic job. We've got a Rixson pivot door here. This door is just a slab stave core door. We added some container store shelving in there, and then to dress it up, I did some exposed Russian birch plywood. I really like that exposed edge. And this room has functioned really well for us. Besides that hardware, which, by the way, this touch latch in here that you push and has 10 pounds of throw, that's a great piece. Sugatsuni now makes one, and speaking of those guys, I use their hardware on all these lift stays. Now, these are books that I'm not at every day, but isn't that nice that if you wanted a book, you could just lift that up and see what you've got in one spot. My guys made these cabinets basically in the driveway, and again, I used that exposed ply, and man, this has been super durable. With a Formica countertop on there, anything that happens, we can wipe it right off. This has been a terrific room, and again, the hardware is awesome. One thing I do want to mention, I just saw this. I've got a son who's a lot like his dad. He's a real entrepreneur. He's got a power washing business. He's got a trash service where he'll take the neighbor's trash cans out and return them after the trash mans come. And he's got a lawn mowing service. I did all those things as a kid. Plus I threw papers. And look at his wish list. This totally cracked me up. I hope you don't mind me, Will, showing the world off of what you're trying to buy this summer. He got a new fishing boat from his grandpa that was under the deck for 20 years, this little small John boat. And he saved up the money to buy a trolling motor for it. Anyways, good stuff. Dumb vinyl windows. When I remodeled this house almost 15 years ago, there weren't many options besides vinyl and wood when you really wanted a custom size down to the, let's say, 1/8 inch. And I couldn't afford the fiberglass window that I wanted to, let alone they didn't customize back then. So I did a bunch of these vinyl. I do not like them, and this is one reason why I don't recommend them, because I've lived with them. Here's the issue, especially in Texas, the windows of mine on the front of the house that were bigger sizes, they would actually warp and move and change, so much so that in my daughter's bedroom, which is a pretty big single hung window, I couldn't get the lock to always work because the vinyl kind of bowed with the heat. Now, I ended up replacing almost all the windows in the front of my house with Marvin Integrity, which now they've changed their name. I think it's Marvin Essential line. But that's a fiberglass window. They've taken the heat, no problem. Now they'll customize down to the gnat's tail end for you. Much better window for not a whole lot more money. These were a bargain basement price, and you know what? I've gotten what I paid for here. Smart fiberglass windows. I spend a little bit more for these, and funny enough, I actually did a video on this several years ago, so you can go back and see how I replaced these in my brick opening. But I went from single hungs here to casements, and that's a great upgrade. Now I've got a nice big piece of glass, no dividers. It really kind of modernized this single-story ranch house of mine. More efficient, but especially more airtight. When you get a casement and you lock it down, you're locking against the bulb seal, whereas if you have a single or a double hung, it usually has a brush seal, and you're moving against that brush seal, so it's naturally not as tight as of a window. These have been really nice. Dumb plumbing. I really went kind of bargain on my plumbing to make my budget, and these fixtures are what I would consider like production builder or spec house fixtures. They worked fine for the first, 3-4 years, and then I started having problems. And in fact, these are a replacement of those when, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago I replaced them, and these are dumb. I made the same mistake again. Can you believe it? Oh, not from 10 years ago. Plumbing's a big deal, guys. Plumbing's gonna last a long time. You're gonna use it. It's gonna have a ton of actuations. You have cartridges in there. At my house, I have hard water, and my wife doesn't want a water softener. So as a result, my plumbing fixtures have been a mess because I used kind of bargain basement price fixtures. Had I used better fixtures, number one, I would have been able to get parts much easier, and I wouldn't have had problems. Here's an example right now. This actually went bad on me last week. The cartridge in here, which is my diverter between my shower heads, I have 2 shower heads in here, stopped working, and I couldn't get my shower to turn on. I had to get the plumber in here. We've kind of got it rigged. I left the handle off so no one would move it, and I've got to try and get the part that I need. I really should have gone smarter on this. Concrete countertops in my bath actually have done just fine. I mean, this section right here looks like the day I installed them 15 years ago. I think it's because I don't have lemon juice or acids or things like that. The toothpaste will wipe off here just fine. The other thing I did in here was I did just a real basic china sink. These have been fine. I've had no problems with that. Now here's an interesting thing. Like concrete being fatty, this is a little bit fattish at the time. This is a Plyboo, I think is the brand name. It's a plywood made from bamboo, and I've always liked that exposed edge. So I did my bath vanities in here in my kids' bath, and I did this awesome medicine cabinet out of Plyboo. And God, this has been so durable. In my kids' bath, I made, when they were younger, now they're older, but when they were younger, I made a step stool out of plywood, and they would bang that against this Plyboo day after day. And you know what? 15 years later, it still looks like the day I installed it. You can't see any dents or dings. Very interesting. All right, now here's something that I've also learned in time. I've got a standard mud set shower. This is a fairly porous, natural material. This is travertine. But because it's a mud set and the travertine's porous, I've got this real thick kind of porous base in my shower. It never dries, and it's really hard to get the mold out of the cracks in the corner. I'm gonna be doing a Schluter system in my new house, which is kind of it's hard to explain in a short method, but basically it's a dimple mat type material that doesn't have this thick base underneath it to stay wet. And I'm gonna use a tile that's not porous. So my shower is gonna stay cleaner, it's not gonna have the mold. It's funny how much you learn when you remodel, isn't it? Smart. The one thing I did right in my house, plumbing wise, this Kohler kitchen sink, stainless steel, single bowl. Don't tell anybody, Kohler actually gave this to me as a freebie. It was awesome. But I cheaped out and put a crappy faucet in that I had to promptly replace. Now I did replace it with a Kohler though, and check this out. They have this really cool feature that when it's on, just wave your hand right here and it turns it off. A pretty awesome feature now that we're washing our hands 13 times during the course of the day. And I showed you this earlier, my cycle finished. Look at that, this Miele automatically pushes out, lets all that steam out, and it ends up being very, very dry dishes. I like this a lot. And the last smart feature I want to mention in my house, my hardwood floors. You know, this section of hardwood floors between my kitchen sink and my fridge, think about how many times I've walked across this in the last 14, 15 years. It's got to be thousands, multiple thousands of times. These are true 3/4 thick hardwoods. I've had 2 dogs now in this house. I've had 4 kids in this house. And yet when I went on vacation 3 years ago, all I had to do was do a quick sand and finish, and these floors looked brand new again. That's the ultimate sustainable floor. 3/4 thick hardwoods. I've sanded them once in 15 years and refinished them. I changed the color, I changed the finish. That is an ultimate smart feature. My HVAC system in my house. When I remodeled this in 05, 06, the furnace that was in here, the air conditioner had just been replaced the year prior, and I hesitated to replace it. I also hesitated to re-insulate in a different way, to bring the insulation to the roof line. As a result, this has been fine, but I gotta say, my energy bills and my comfort have gone way higher than I would have liked. I typically spend in the summertime $200 plus maybe $250 in electricity for this house. Plus I've got a gas furnace, I've got gas hot water, a gas dryer, which means I'm using a ton of electricity. This is not a very efficient house. And it wasn't very comfortable when I first moved in either. I had to add a dehumidifier to the house. Now, if you've been watching my videos, you know that I'm a big fan of dehumidification. So I'm always checking my humidity in my house. I just have this separate hygrometer. I'll put a link to this. It's like 10 bucks on Amazon. I love this. And I added, I'll show you in a second, an ultra air dehumidifier to my attic. Huge difference in comfort. And I also, since I moved in, realized that my daughter is asthmatic. This thing just has a pleated 1-inch filter, but this over here is giving me some extra filtration. Now, I only typically run it at night. I've got a hallway return right down there on the bottom. And this guy, this Field Controls Trio, has basically just a big pleated filter in there and is getting me kind of near HEPA quality filtration, but only air that goes through it is getting filtered. So I run it all night long. I'm trying to run it like 12 hours a day, let's say, and it's giving me some extra filtration before that air gets sucked into the furnace and gets distributed through my house. But let's end the video up in the attic. All right, so my attic, this is probably my biggest disappointment in my 2006 Matt Rasinger. I left this attic traditionally insulated at the floor level, which means I'm in a vented roof cavity here. What a bummer. I should have changed this at the time. It was hard to do because I've got an attached garage. I would have had to separate the attic space from the garage space. I would have had to use some type of spray foam at the roof line, let's say. But all of these ducts up here in the attic, man, that's a huge disappointment to me. These ducts are, R8 ducts, let's say, but this attic easily gets to 120 plus degrees, 130 degrees maybe on a typical summer day, which means I've got 55-degree air running through these little thin insulated ducts with almost 100-degree delta. That's super inefficient, and that's part of why my bills are so expensive. Now, I went back and did insulation 2.0 up here in the attic, where I added some baffles. I made a video on that. I re-blew. I made sure that I could air seal as best as possible between my conditioned space and my unconditioned space. And then back here on this pop out I've got in my family room, where I had bat insulation, I pulled that out and I used closed cell spray foam to help increase the efficiency. But ultimately, the way that I insulated this and having this ductwork up in this hot space, super inefficient. That's my one disappointment. Guys, thanks for joining me on this personal build show. I'd love to know what resonates with you on either my dumb things or my smart things, what you've done on your house. Pop a comment below and I'll try and respond to as many of those as possible. Guys, I really appreciate your support. Also, go check out my wife's channel. She didn't know I was filming this ahead of time. Hopefully I won't be in the doghouse after filming this video, but if you're not currently a subscriber, hit that subscribe button below. We've got new content every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, otherwise we'll see you next time on The Build Show.